Good evening. Welcome to the January 17th, 2023 meeting of the Westford School Committee. It's nice to see everybody here and nice to have people joining us at home, hopefully, in one way or the other. And we will start our evening with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up is our consent agenda. Materials are in, they're not in the packet. Did they?
Warrant, yep.
It was in the packet.
Just today. Midday.
Yeah, warrant summary.
Maybe I downloaded it before. I need to get that.
I checked the website, so.
Okay,
it's on
thank
there.
you.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I'll pull it up.
Okay, any questions on the consent agenda or comments?
What's
Just calling out the Special Education Reserve Fund deposit, which I don't have the amount handy.
$2,000 or something?
$22,000?
No,
$2,604.
$2,600.
$4.10.
Jenny has it.
And it's in the packet.
And thank you for that. It's nice to, anytime we can put a deposit in there, so we're thankful for it.
Right. And I just appreciate the paper trail of it, right, because we've had, it just makes it a lot easier to
Yeah.
go back and look at.
Okay, all in favor of approving the consent agenda? Okay, that's 7-0. Fantastic. Next up, we are going to go to public comment. On the agenda, you'll see under public comment is our budget hearing, which is required. But what I will do is open it up to general public comment first before we go and enter into the budget hearing. And so there's nobody in the room for comment. If anybody on Zoom wants to give public comment, raise your hand in Zoom and we can bring you in. And just to reiterate for people who maybe haven't heard this before, we do allow public comment via Zoom. I know a lot of people might be, I don't know about a lot, I know some people may be watching on YouTube or on WestfordCAT on their cable provider. Unfortunately, we can't accept public comment through there because there's no means to do that. But if that's something you're interested in doing at a future meeting, our agenda always has our Zoom link and you can join us there for public comment. All that said, the audio and video quality is better on YouTube and WestfordCAT than Zoom. I'm not seeing anybody in Zoom for public comment, and so we can move on to the budget hearing.
Motion to open the public hearing according to Section 38N of Chapter 71 of Mass General Law.
Second.
Okay, any questions on that? All in favor of opening the budget hearing? Okay, 7-0. And so, same thing, we're required to have a budget hearing before the budget goes before the town. This is our opportunity to do so as we are discussing the budget tonight, and this is the opportunity for anybody in the public who has been following along or who has questions or comments about the school, the Westford Public Schools budget, to make those comments. Again, I'm not seeing anybody in the room, but if anybody on Zoom has comment on the budget, you could raise your hand now, and we could bring you in for that. Either one of you. Otherwise, we can say that we have done our public hearing for the budget. We appreciate people following along the budget throughout the budget season for the past couple of months and look forward to the discussion later in the agenda on that.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor of closing the public hearing? Okay. With that, we can move to our informational updates, starting with superintendent and assistant superintendent.
Thank you. I received information today that our Westford Academy Asian Culture Club is sponsoring a Lunar New Year celebration. It starts at on Saturday the 28th, January 28th. The activities start at 4. There's 2 different dinner seatings, 4:30 and 5, and then there's entertainment at 7 o'clock. I'm not sure where all of the access information in terms of how to get tickets, there's a QR code.
There's a website.
QR code, and also it's on WestfordCAT, and then people post it on Facebook or like post it in WA.
Okay.
And I'll put the link in the. Do we have a chat?
In the chat.
We don't have a
Maybe
chat
we don't.
enabled. We don't.
It's on the billboard.
Oh,
Oh,
it's
it's on Billboard.
It's already, thank you.
Go to the
Okay, great.
WPS billboard on westfordk12.us, and you can find it there.
So excited
I've
about
seen it somewhere.
that upcoming opportunity, and I think many of us were invited to participate in Robinson's challenge tunnel. Kindness. Sorry, the kindness. I'm stuck on challenge success, and it's like it was a kindness challenge. Do you want to explain it a little bit more? I think like you're a little bit more familiar with what they did in the past and
Right,
what
so-
they're planning to do.
Yeah, so, and the idea is to just pass kindness along from teachers to students and staff to staff and students to students. And in the invitation, I don't know if you saw the video of a previous year, but staff and community members lined up the halls of the Robinson School holding up kindness signs, and the students marched through, and you could just see their faces beaming. So that's next Monday. We look forward to being there at, I believe it's 8:45, to anybody who can make that. But I know it's a special day and even week for students at the Robinson School.
So we might delay our agenda setting.
Yep. Good point.
Worth
That
it.
has already been moved by Nina.
And I know, thank you very much.
That's what
She's
we're
on
doing
top
the
of
game.
it. Are you already adjusted our agenda setting meeting for
that
Monday?
day.
Thank you.
You can't believe this.
All right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And I just want to mention that Thursday, January 26th, is our next early release day, and that's a professional development day for our staff, and we're just continuing on those big picture topics and conversations throughout the district for half of the 2-hour session. The other half, we're taking the time to do a staff security training, which we do annually. And the idea, it's an online training module that prevents our network from cyber attacks. It's something that we work with Mike Wells to ensure that staff are retrained each year, and it certainly makes the district less vulnerable, but it's also really great information to have and think about in your personal life too. So it's kind of chopped up into 2 parts, which it typically is each January when we do this.
There's been a few school districts that have been
Right.
ransomware.
Yeah, quite a
Dr.
nuisance.
Cleary's face.
It's not pretty.
Yeah, and it's expensive.
Yeah.
It's expensive to get out of those situations.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
School committee updates. I'll start actually with a reminder that this Thursday is our the budget hearing, FinCom budget hearing with Select Board, and we're also posted jointly with them as well. So 7 p.m. on Thursday, we'll have that hearing.
Is it virtual?
It is.
So I know I was like
We were
blanking
invited
on
to
that,
be
but
virtual
yes,
panelists.
yes,
Okay.
that's right. That's right.
Just checking.
Yep. Other school committee updates. Sean.
Yeah, I could say Healthy Westford this week we had the town's new sustainability coordinator, Sue Thomas, in, which was a great experience. Talked a lot about kind of cross-pollination, how can Healthy Westford help them and vice versa, and she has, given that the schools have a big footprint in town, right, has taken a very big interest in how we do business. So do we have Sue on any agendas coming up, or?
No, but we've talked about it.
Not yet, we've
Okay.
talked about
Yeah.
it, yeah.
It just made me think that it would be great to get
Yeah.
her or from the respective, it's kind of a long acronym, the committee, right? Yeah. Climate Action and Sustainability Committee.
Clean energy.
So it is
Clean
part,
energy and
And
sustainability. Thank
sustainability.
you. Yeah.
and as that is a leg of our strategic district improvement plan.
Yes.
That's kind of one of the things we're looking forward to having more continued conversations even in the spring with them.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Sean.
I have a quick update. I'm just debating whether this belongs here or in budget, but Finance Subcommittee met last week, and we had a really good conversation about the gap to, to the town appropriation. And we got an update from Jenny, I'm not going to steal her thunder, about that gap number. And I also wanted to thank Courtney Moran for attending. We had a good conversation about how Courtney projects out special education tuitions. And it was really helpful to just have that check-in last week before tonight's meeting. And I think we've also talked a little bit about what other things the Finance Subcommittee can do to bolster the budget process. And one of those, I think, coming up probably in the spring will be a review of the food service department. So that will be something to look forward to.
Great. Thanks, Finance Subcommittee. Other comments from the committee? Updates?
Policy met on Friday. Lots of work to do, but the main thing is that our new policy that we voted on the last meeting is all officially on Airtable. I will say Gloria gave me a really some tips and tricks for Airtable now that, you know, I was so excited to discover as we went through the process on Friday. It was the blue arrow. I never realized what it could do.
Blue what?
The little blue arrow that expands it. I had been working in a much more difficult manner. So that's ready to go. And we are now looking at kind of a few waves coming to hit us after budget. We'll wait till we're kind of done. But it'll be another kind of spring of policies coming
I
at
almost
you.
feel like we need to start issuing disclaimers, like school committee has no financial relationship with Airtable.
Well, it's funny. You all say it more than, like, you don't have to say it. You don't have to say the name of it. We are not getting paid. You could just be like, the database.
Database, okay. The
But you are the source of the contagion.
I know. 2 of the podcasts I listen to now have paid advertisements from Airtable. So to hear, like, Conan O'Brien talk about how great Airtable is, I'm like, right, Conan?
He's
Sorry.
late to the game. We're well ahead of him.
Thanks, policy. Looking forward to it. Student updates.
Yeah. So the student advisory committee, we had our meeting last Friday, and we went over a couple of things. We talked about the budget and like how it's like coming to the end, and like the student involvement in the budget, and like how we can maybe work on that, and kind of getting some like basic like what the budget is, how it works, and like how students can get involved into it. And then yes. Yeah. And then on top of that, we also talked about like AP classes and about like the registration process of AP classes, how it's like now moved up to November, and how the fees have also gone up, just like kind of how that works, what the student opinion on that is. And then a couple of other like just school-wide updates. There's the senior dance coming up. And then on top of that, there's also a Planning for Life After WA seminar, which the guidance department is holding. I believe it's online in February. And then also there was a DECA event where about 200 students went to UMass Lowell and competed for a spot at the state conference. And I believe we won the majority of the events, and we swept a couple of events, which means we got 1 to 5 all of these places. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
this was my first year doing it. It was really exciting.
Did you do it?
Yeah.
we both did.
Oh, no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. So yeah.
States is next. isn't it?
Yeah, States is in March.
States is next for, yeah. Okay, so on top of that, this is a big week for high school students. We have midterms going on this week. For parents who want to know about the schedule, Mr. Toomey sent out an email, should have the schedule laid out. We are only having half days with 2 blocks of your student's schedule in each day, running from Thursday to Tuesday. And there's plenty of time to see your teachers, plenty of time to make up stuff. Or if you need extra time, there's plenty of time to fit that in. So it is a big week for students. Buses are still running. I believe they're doing the regular morning schedule, and then they'll, I believe that they're going regularly at the same time every day. So at 2 p.m. is when the buses are going. cafeteria is open. And obviously, the elephant in the room is that this is the first time midterms are happening in about 3 years, I would say. So juniors, sophomores, and freshmen have never taken a midterm in high school. Seniors, we've taken one midterm in high school. So things are definitely looking a little different. And I think teachers are accommodating that. Students are, adjusting to this new sort of level of preparation for a test. So it's an interesting experience overall. I think the ghostwriter covered an article or a student opinion page today on the students' thoughts. So if any of you guys would like to see that, you can definitely check out the ghostwriter. One important thing is that these midterms are 6% when they used to be 10%, in an effort to slowly allow for student resiliency to build over the next couple years, accounting for the pandemic and its lasting effects. So it is counted for 6% to sort of not skew a student's grade as much, if perhaps they don't perform the best so that is sort of the point of that. And for sports season, we are in the thick of it. All sports are going, swim, basketball, skiing is happening. So all these events are happening. And if you would like to support their senior nights, this is the time that those are happening as well. So definitely keep your eye out for that. And another important thing is that in February, Dr. Shannon Barbamingo and Mr. Antonelli are planning to hold a forum similar to one that we had last year, where students can have a dialogue with administration about issues they feel face our school, specifically rooted in race. And so it's good to have that dialogue opened up again after a year. So if anyone would like to come watch that, I think that'd be a very important discussion for everybody to have.
When is it?
It's
Sometime in
more,
February,
yes,
I
it's
believe.
sometime in February. More information will be coming. But yeah, it is in February, so it'll come soon. And then the last thing is that Lunar New Year is really, really close. So to anyone celebrating, Happy Lunar New Year. Yeah.
This is the earliest New Year I have ever seen in my entire life.
Oh, right, really?
Wow.
It's never this early.
Really
Yeah.
interesting.
It's usually in February, right?
It's normally in early February, but it can go into like President's Day.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah,
like-
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I have
Yeah.
never seen like January 22nd.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Thank you for that update. We had a nice meeting with student council before our meeting,
Yep.
and so I know we got to talk about midterms there too, and that was really helpful. And so we always look forward to those. Yes.
Can I ask a question about that? The way you were talking about the 6%,
Yeah.
has that been portrayed to students as a temporary measure or a permanent measure? Because the way you were saying it, it sounded like it was
Interesting.
post-pandemic. Does anyone happen to know the answer to that?
I don't assume it's temporary.
Yeah.
I would
think
hope
it's-
that I would hope
This is
that
an
it's
adjustment.
permanent.
I
Yeah.
think-
I would hope that that's a permanent adjustment because
Right.
the dynamic of the way students talked about it, don't mean to underestimate
Yeah.
the stress everybody's under this week because midterms are stressful, but I thought the feedback we got from the students this evening was that the 6% does take some of that pressure off. They're still getting the experience of studying for a cumulative exam, but without quite the consequences of being it's quite as hard as, like you said, if you have one rough day,
Yeah.
which I think at the 10% mark, students felt that pressure keenly. And in past years, we'd certainly gotten that feedback from students that you have one rough day, it can have a significant impact on your grade for the term and for the year. And I would hope that 6% is a permanent change. And I really appreciated the feedback from students that said teachers are working hard to make sure that you feel prepared for these exams, since they are a new experience for a lot of our students who haven't been through them before, and that they're really working hard to take that pressure off. I just thought that was amazing feedback to hear, and I'm glad to hear that's happening.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I think that, first of all, one, I do agree with the students that I am in favor of the 6%. And I hope, yes, before I gave my statement, or before listening to you, I would say I hope it would have lasted.
Yeah.
I do think that, to fully answer your question, that is not specifically conveyed to the student body. Maybe we just need to. I think for us personally, we've gone through so many changes over the years that we don't know what's staying and what's changing. Which our schedules changed, our midterms have changed, so we don't really know, and so kind of we assume, we expect things to sort of change based on how the years go. And I will say, I do think that there was a sense of understanding that maybe this was a result of the pandemic, and then we don't know what's to come. But I'm glad to hear that it is there to stay, and maybe we can definitely communicate that to the student body more.
I hope so. That's the case.
Great point. Thanks. Okay. Next on our agenda, and while I'm talking, I'm going to bring her in. We are fortunate enough to welcome the town's new community wellness coordinator, Nicole Laviolette, and we're bringing Nicole in on Zoom. Hi, Nicole. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Great. It's so good to see you. Thank you for joining us. We can hear you and we can see you. And I know you had a couple slides. I'm going to bring those up if that sounds right to you.
Yeah, great.
Do you want to kind of introduce yourself in the role a little bit while I bring those slides in?
Sure. So I'm Nicole Laviolette. I'm the Community Wellness Coordinator for the town of Westford. I've been here for about 7.5 months now. The Community Wellness role and department is new for the town as of when I started. And there's a focus on, as you can see through the slides, outreach and education to the Westford community around availability of programming and services to support individual and family well-being. You support town departments, the schools, community groups, and faith leaders. So my position came out of a necessity during discussion with the school and safety task force. So that's a small snippet of the focus of community wellness. And then I tried to focus my attention on the supports that have come through for the schools. It's the department is still new, it's still evolving. I support and appreciate feedback from residents as far as where they see the need. So I have worked with a few of the school guidance counselors, and I believe it's the school social worker is her title in the high school, around supports for them and for students. Recently, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health released a new resource guide, but before that guide came out, myself and Michaela at the high school were going back and forth and creating what's local to Westford as far as supports for groups, for outpatient counseling, for Al-Anon, NA groups, like what is available to parents and residents and students from Westford. Another piece is the mobile clinician. So the mobile clinician is a piece that came out in September. It's an ARPA funded position, and that's available to any resident, including students in Westford. Myself and Allison Christopher are referral point people for the mobile clinician. There is a little piece with this that I've learned recently with students being referred. So for students, they have to be Westford residents to be able to utilize this service. So if a student is attending the schools in Westford and they aren't a Westford resident, unfortunately, they're not able to utilize the mobile clinician service, but we are able to help them find other services and supports from other area counseling agencies. Another piece, and please interrupt me if you have questions. Another piece that we've brought back is the parent support group. So Westford used to have pre-pandemic something called Parent Connect, and it was run out of various, I think the last location was through Rodenbush. So with Sue Hanley and Claire O'Brien, we've brought back this parent support group. So it is for any parent in Westford who feels that they need some extra support around supporting themselves and their children, for their children that are having mental health challenges. So it's run the second Thursday of every month. We're in the town meeting room in Town Hall from 7 to 8:30. It can be a drop-in if parents want to come 1 month and not another month, if they can stay for 45 minutes, if they want to stay for the hour and a half. It's whatever really is best for them. And we're modeling the group from the Flourishing Families out of BU as a reference. Another piece, which you may have talked about, is the opioid settlement funds. We had a working group together. Brian Rourke represented the Westford schools for information as far as what could be best used with these funds to support the students and faculty within the Westford Public Schools. So we actually are an article at town meeting in March. So as far as approving those settlement funds. So a piece that is for the school system is around Panorama. So that's what we have in now, and we have the funding until 2038. So it's, it has moving parts as far as meeting the needs for residents and for the schools.
Right.
So that's kind of what I've done so far with the schools. And then future opportunities, whenever I talk with a resident or somebody in a department, one of the faculty is around, what collaboration and what opportunities are there for the community wellness. So as far as, what type of collaborations, I'm connecting with Michaela next week around, what is missing in Westford for substance use disorders prevention and supports. Are there things that could be brought to Westford that have been here in the past, or things that are in other towns that we could bring, here to support students and residents. So I'm here to help as far as exploring ideas for around mental health or substance use disorder, for ideas around teacher development. And another piece is we will be having a speaker series starting in March. We're kind of finalizing who's going to be coming. So those will be in and around Westford. We haven't decided exactly yet where they'll be, but as far as one per month and maybe a little more as far as presentations and talks around mental health and well-being. So, and then there's my information if you ever need to give me a call, if you have a question, feedback. And I do have a page on the town website.
Fantastic. And I was going to ask you, you were talking about the mobile clinician. I assume if students felt that they needed to, reach out to that person or avail themselves of that service, they could do that through the guidance staff at Westford Academy. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so what's happening right now is the guidance counselors are providing that information, and parents are calling it's mostly recently it's been myself, but Alice and Christopher were the two contacts to go through to see if this would be a best fit for the student or the parent.
Great. That was going to be my next. I was going to say, is this contact information for parents who maybe don't have access to the guidance staff as easily? This is a good way to reach out, is through your staff contact info. Okay.
Yeah, so another piece too was, so my position was it was very new at the end of the FY22 school year. So a piece of it was, my name kind of got out there a little bit. So there were parents, that connected with me during the summer. So that's another piece, that while school's out of session, that I can be a resource for parents during the summer.
Yeah, that's actually really important.
Can I ask it? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Why don't you go, Sean?
You sure? Okay. Thanks, Nicole. Nicole, Sean Kelly, just curious if I wanted updates as to kind of what was going on around town, where would I look? Would that be on the town website, or do you have like a newsletter going out, or what?
So I have a page on the town website as far as local resources and information. I'm trying to put anything new on that front page. I did my first news flash a few weeks ago. I do an article in the town manager newsletter, but there's also something that came up through the select board meeting where a resident had wanted more information on specific, diagnosis. So that's something that I'm putting together, and we're going to possibly create a separate page with upcoming information. And I'll also be doing a wellness series on WestfordCAT. So that will be beginning the end of February, around new information and local resources and information.
Mari?
Sure, thanks. Hi, my name is Mari Garcia. When you were talking earlier about substance use treatment that's not available in Westford, I thought of so many things, but I think one of my questions is around, I've worked with a lot of juveniles in my time, and one of the biggest barriers to substance use treatment is transportation. And so if there aren't groups, like SOAP groups that are available nearby, it's really hard for families to get back and forth from treatment because it's something that needs to happen every day, and also it's often for just like a couple of hours. So are you thinking about any groups or something of that nature?
So right now it's really truly just an exploration to see what is the need in Westford, and it came about pretty much what you're saying, as far as trying to connect somebody to a resource, and then that barrier of time and as far as location. So the one piece that's a benefit a little bit, may not be best practice, but is around that virtual aspect is still very much involved with those groups. So that potentially can break down a little bit of that barrier, but knowing that, virtual isn't necessarily best practice for all students or residents, but that is still something that is an option for some of those groups. But knowing that, typically from Westford, the closest is going to be Lowell. Lowell it's our closest city. It's, where most of the resources that are available. So, what does that look like to support residents when transportation is an issue? I think is a starting point for a conversation, though.
Yeah. Thank you.
Aaron?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about the wellness series. So I know you mentioned it was on WestfordCAT. Is there some way for it to be like on YouTube or something that's like more accessible to students to kind of make sure that everyone has access to it?
So I'm going to answer your question with a question. So is WestfordCAT available on YouTube?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
So if it was published as a segment on the television, it would come up as a separate program on YouTube too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question. Other questions or comments?
Can I ask how much the opioid settlement funds are? Like, what dollar amount is that?
192.
So don't quote me on this one because I don't have it right in front of me.
The most
But I
recent
can
one.
give you a
Ballpark.
while I'm looking for it. So as of right now, we have 129,000 and a little more.
Thank you.
So we are going to. That's what we have as of today. And then we'll be receiving additional funds until 2038, and I believe the total amount is a little over $600,000.
Thank you.
So it is in the actual, if you go to the select board for the last meeting, it is on the agenda, I believe, for the exact amount. The memo is in there that I put together. Apologize that I don't have the exact information in front of me.
No, that's totally fine.
Can that ever be used for like something like transportation for the substance program?
I have to ask her what the terms are.
They had a working group collaborate on.
So there is, am I able to drop into a link or no?
No, I don't think chat is enabled on this.
Okay.
On this
So what I
account.
can do is I can follow up if that's okay. I do have Valerie's information, so I could email that information if you would like. So there is very specific information that DPH released as far as for the settlement funds and how they can be used.
Okay.
So I don't remember seeing transportation on there, but that doesn't mean that it isn't something that we could explore for the use of the funds.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sometimes folks use like Uber vouchers and such.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The current list that was approved by Select Board includes Narcan lock boxes, rescue kits for first responders, another year of the interface service from the town, some curriculum at Neshoba Tech, the Panorama subscription for us, and a speaking engagement for students and families. That's like a very high level summary of it.
Okay.
But they had like a working group with a bunch of representatives, and as Nicole said, Brian Work was our school rep that worked together on that.
Thank you, Valerie.
Yeah.
Did you have a question then?
Well, yeah, I was just going to give Nicole a chance to talk about the Community Behavioral and Mental Health Committee that was just approved. If you wanted to just let everybody know about that.
Sure. So that was on the same select board as the opioid settlement funds, and the select board did approve for us to move forward. So right now there are the applications for, there are 4 residents that are able to put in the applications as far as citizens at large to participate. So a little bit of a background is it's the Community Behavioral and Mental Health Committee. There are the representative fire department, police department, the town social worker, myself, the health department, 4 citizens at large, and a few, I believe I'm forgetting
Sorry,
a few
I
others.
have the
think
list
Valerie
up
has
so
it
I can
in
help
front of
you.
her.
Yeah, so somebody from the Westford Public Schools representative, a Neshoba Tech representative, a community faith leader, and then the 4 citizens at large.
Yes, so the focus is really around, as far as looking at the data that we have for Westford, as far as the various surveys that are done from the community health centers, the local hospitals, what we're able to do through the health center, the Westford Health Department around substance use disorder and mental health, behavioral health. So looking at the data, presenting it to this committee, and really talking through it to see, what is happening in Westford. And with that, also looking at what resources are in the Westford community, the surrounding towns, and as far as what are the lack of resources and services. And then as far as collaborating and exploring what are the needs for our residents. And a piece of that we did add is around, similar to the School and Safety Task Force, is around recommendations. So as far as recommendations to the Board of Health and the Select Board around possible programming.
It might be useful. So we've had certainly over the years many discussions around student and staff mental health. And recently, as part of the ARPA process, we've put in for a number of things that certainly fall under that umbrella of mental health and mental well-being. And so it might be interesting to have a conversation offline with you just to go over, you've probably seen those in the ARPA list, but it might be useful for you to see that, and we could talk to that a little bit, just so that's coming from this committee and from our conversations with the administration on what are some of the priorities that we're seeing, especially right now, especially in the wake of COVID, that feel like high needs for us, just so you're aware of some of our thinking on that, and if that's useful at all, where there might be overlap or collaboration going forward. Some of those things have not been funded from the select board yet. They're still in the ARPA pipeline to be looked at presumably next month. So if that would be of interest, we could set something up so we could just look at those things.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I did see, through the spreadsheet, as far as what's being recommended, but it would be great to have some background about, where that the decision made to put those proposals together. Sure. And a little bit more of information would be wonderful.
Okay. Yeah, we'll set something up. Thank you. Other questions for Nicole?
I have no questions. I'm just very excited
Comments?
about
Okay.
the position. I think it's so badly needed, and I love the whole community approach to it. So I'm really excited about this, Nicole, and looking forward to seeing where it goes.
Thank you so much.
So truly, please feel free to call or email if you do have ideas. I know I use this word, but the department is truly evolving. To meet the needs of the community and the residents, it's best to hear from residents as far as what they feel is needed for Westford.
That's great.
So
Nicole,
thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time tonight to meet with us. It's good to see you, and we look forward to the future conversations.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Nicole. Have a good night.
You didn't give her the, you can stay, but we also don't.
She got out of here. She was off, so.
Is Brian our representative then on that new committee she was saying, that working group, or
Has
she
that
said at
been-
Westford?
I don't think we've,
Brian was just
Brian's
working on
not
that
it.
specific,
On the
where there was a very
opioid,
specific
yeah.
working group for that settlement that they were looking at.
But, I mean, it hasn't been decided,
Hmm.
the new rep, so that, we can talk about that another time.
Okay, that was great. Next up is our budget discussion, our final budget discussion. And so the materials are in the packet. We welcome our finance director, Jenny Lynn, to the table. Thank you. Materials are in the packet, the presentation from earlier, the full line item budget as well. And there's also a link to the committee questions that have been answered, and we thank the administration for doing such a good job of getting very complete, helpful answers to those. Did you?
No, sorry, I was just
Like
looking.
you're ready to go.
In my head, I was jumping onto that. I
then
appreciate
jump.
the patience for all of those questions. I know, especially I'm thinking about my own sort of learnings from year to year, right? Like sometimes I ask something and I'm like, did I know that before? Especially just the way things are our accounting continues to evolve. Some things gets captured here 5 years ago, but now it shows up over here. So I just appreciate the patience with all of those questions that I feel like keep asking. So thank you.
But they're so helpful too. Like, I
Yeah,
think they
yes.
It's really
illuminate
important.
a lot of things in the budget that
Yep.
that help us in future years as well.
Right.
Like we'll know better.
And I mean, sometimes the sort of unspoken part for me is sometimes we talk about like, would the answer to this question change my vote? No, but I want to be able to talk to these parts of the budget if somebody asked me, and it's just due diligence, I feel like, for our, one of our 3 or 4 major reasons for existing.
And I guess I would say that while we take a vote tonight, the budget process continues, right? Until town meeting, it's still a budget in process. At this point, we more or less are handing it off a little bit to the town, but that is an ongoing collaborative process, starting with the budget hearing this Thursday and the future budget hearing. So it's not the end of the school budget. It's just the next, kicking off the next phase. And I think this year, that's especially important to remember because there is a discrepancy that we're continuing to work through, and we're continuing to look for how that's going to, be handled. And so I think this year really highlights that this is just another step in the budget process. And with that, I think we can open up to any questions people have. We can revisit questions that you submitted electronically. If you want to highlight those here, or if you're happy with those answers, that's fine as well, or if other things come to mind.
I think Nicole mentioned it, but Jenny had an update on the actual gap, right? Or Dr. Chu.
Yes, actually, we receive some update from the town side because we have been communicating with our town partner since the fall about different things, and they provided a multiple pathway trying to support us for the gap. And so we're still working with the town and waiting for the updates. For the 266,000 for the gap between 2.92% and 2.5%. We recently just received update from the South Board because they're gonna approve. They already approved the 20,250 to support Panorama. They just had a meeting on January 10th. To use the opioid we just talked about in Nicole's presentation to help us to pay for Panorama, the identification of student needs. So that's something they can help us to alleviate the gap and help us to reduce the difference between the school request and the town allocation.
So the magic number is 246.
Yeah.
66
Yep.
now.
I think it's important to know that our request hasn't gone down by $20,000. that the Panorama, by using the opioid settlement funds to pay for Panorama, that's allowing the 2.5 to go up the $20,000. Because I just want to be clear, we're not reducing, our request is our request because of the needs that we have. So when we do talk about the gap shrinking, it is because, well, we had already built Panorama into our budget.
Yes.
With the opioid settlement being able to cover that, we're able to use that $20,000 for another aspect of it. So it's actually, so the difference is lessened, but it's not because our request has gone down, because it's important that's what we believe is important for us to be successful.
Yeah, good clarification. Did you?
I just wanted to say, one, thank you for all the answers to the questions that I put in. Definitely clarified the questions I had. And I know this is different, that we are approving a budget that does have this gap. And I hope that in no way makes anyone nervous or unsettled, since that is different than our past practice. I actually think it's a sign of a really healthy town and school partnership and collaboration through this budget process, that we know that there's a lot of moving pieces. We know that there's multiple pathways that could address that gap. And so I think it's a really healthy sign that we are comfortable taking a vote this evening that does have that gap, when in the past we had maybe felt a pressure that those numbers had to line up perfectly. And in this instance, they're not lining up perfectly, but that's because we're going to continue having conversations throughout the budget process between now and town meeting. And absolutely, at town meeting, we all know those numbers have to line up perfectly. The town budget has to balance perfectly on March 25th. But it's okay to have a little bit of uncertainty about how we're going to get there, because we're working together to get there. And I think that's a really healthy thing. So I feel good about that, and I hope, people who have watched the process in the past understand that this is a healthy sign and should not be unsettling.
Well said. Thank you. Chen?
Yeah. So based on multiple conversations in multiple meetings, I think there is understanding both on the school side and on the town side is that there is a way to bridge the gap. And then so this actually tonight is actually approving the desired budget, but that will actually depend really on how much first comes out, and then before town meeting we have to actually do a little bit adjustment based on what really happened at that time. So do we actually need to reaffirm something before the town meeting, because the numbers might fluctuate a little bit? So the number may be exactly the same or may not be exactly the same. If it's different, then probably we have an obligation to reaffirm a different number.
Yeah, I think
that was the same question I
Okay,
actually
if
had,
it's
was
different.
kind of like, what does the process look like if we can't close the gap? Or, as we all know as well, we're waiting on that special education information piece in terms of tuitions.
Right.
So it's kind of, trying to figure out what does the process look like for going forward for the next few months, knowing that the budget can definitely, has the potential to fluctuate by a lot.
My sense would be that if there was a change to the bottom line of our budget, that we would want to bring it back before the committee and have a vote. I don't think statutorily we necessarily have to do that. The vote that matters is at town meeting for the budget. The departments submit their budget requests, and then this process plays out over the next 2 months. But I think we would all agree that that would be what we would want to see, is that it would come back before us, and we would take another vote and have a discussion on any changes to this.
Yeah. If it's the same number, then we don't have to do anything.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Yep.
Right, I'd agree with that. If it's the same number and there's a different pathway to get there, we don't need to revote. But if the number at all would change for some reason, then I think we have to revote, because we need to have a vote on the record of what that number is that goes to town meeting.
Yeah.
As our request. So we would revote.
And it's not technically always about the number, it's how it's kind of allocated as well, or so to kind of, if we have to change, if there's any changes in how that number is potentially allocated or whatever, I think it's worth always a discussion to keep us kind of in the loop.
And our meeting schedule allows for that. We meet between March 1st and town meetings on the 13th, so I feel like we
Just the
have,
one, okay, yeah.
we have that
Probably a good-
built in.
Good. Okay.
When is the town meeting?
March 25th,
25th, okay. 3 weeks.
10 a.m.
Don't worry, it's not St. Patrick's Day, so you'll be fine.
What did you say? You said 3 weeks?
From
3 weeks
March
after-
1st
From
Oh.
March.
Yeah,
to
it's
like
3 weeks, yeah.
21st, so we have plenty of time.
Plenty.
Yeah. So this may not be the last time we see budget on our agenda.
Yeah.
Is what we're saying, and that's okay.
We probably should continue to have updates anyway, because
Right.
we're all
Well, yes,
waiting on
we're-
this information, and so.
There will be more.
Even if we're not necessarily kind of having to re-vote or reassess.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
there's no
whenever
harm.
there is any movement or numbers change or whatever, then it's helpful to have update in future meetings.
Any thoughts from administration on the discussion? Anything up till now? Any?
No, other than
Other comments?
the fact that we have had, multiple conversations about it, and I appreciate what Gloria has to say about the idea that based on the partnerships that we have and the conversations that we've been having with, the Director of Finance for the town and just other town partners, the reality is that I am confident with this path, and I'm confident that we're going to be able to figure out a way to make this work. It's not the same concern that we've had previously, because there are different pieces like the opioid settlement, right? Different aspects of things that the select board was even looking at with ARPA, and then to know that we'll get the final state aid information on March 1st, and that often will give us information too. So I'm confident that I think it's important that the request is such that I would not be comfortable trying to reduce the request.
I want to underscore this year, like, prior years, it's challenging. It's challenging to construct a budget that meets all the needs, all the programming, all the staffing that we want for Westford Public Schools. So I appreciate all the work that went into this thoughtful budget. It's a responsible budget, and I think it serves our students and families really well.
I'd just like to echo that, because I feel like last meeting I was reflecting on how the budget conversations this year have made me feel anticlimactic, because there hasn't.
You want drama?
No, I don't want drama. But it's not that this budget is like a home run either, right? Like, we are rolling over heating and electricity amounts because of our priorities in other areas, and I think that could be a weakness, right? So it's not celebration that this is funding everything and we think it's a home run. It's great work, and I think it took a lot to get there, but I just want to make sure that the message is that there's no confetti and balloon drop either.
Right.
It's responsible budgeting
Right.
with what we have.
Yes. Yeah.
With very limited resources.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I think that's been very clear through all the conversations that we've had.
Yeah.
It's been very well thought out and everything considered.
And the one other point I just wanted to make too is because I noticed that I sometimes zoom in too quickly on the budget. I get excited about the numbers and the spreadsheets. And as I was thinking about tonight, I zoomed out a little bit, and I was thinking about the staffing changes at Stony Brook at the middle school based on the enrollment. And I do think we sort of talked about this a little bit last year, but I do want to just, it doesn't have to be tonight, but I do want to flag a concern about how to have a community discussion about what that means for the mini teams at that school, because I have been hearing that concern from families about what that means for changes. So
At Stony Brook, I think, is that the because I know was it the project-based learning kind of was, that specific class was being phased out, so is that kind of those two, I know it's an enrollment number as well, but I was just curious, is that also because of how the
Well,
kind
so
of
the-
changes in it?
The idea of the two-person teams.
Yeah.
You know, a number of years ago, we created a model where they had just more flexibility with time
Yeah.
and more autonomy.
Yeah.
And so it became a more purely interdisciplinary project-based learning approach. The teachers who were using project-based learning strategies are still using those strategies. The difference is now in 6th grade, we have 2 4-person teams with the different content areas. So so that flexibility of time has also disappeared. But they're still looking for opportunities to do interdisciplinary work, and those teachers are still using those strategies. So years ago, when we were doing this, we were able to confidently talk about the fact that students, whether they were on a 2-person team or on a 4-person team, the strategies were actually pretty widespread throughout Stony Brook. So students were experiencing project-based learning throughout their time there. The difference is that 2-person team that truly had, with 2 teachers able to decide and mix the content areas as the need demanded. It just, I know I sound like a broken record, but it just had a greater deal of flexibility. And so that 2-person team exists this year in 7th grade.
Yeah.
And it won't exist next year. But those strategies are still
Still
going to
there.
continue.
But that's kind of some of the shifting.
That would be
is
some of the
it?
questions and the concerns, and what does
yeah.
it mean? What does it look like? People ask,
Yeah.
kind of asking those questions, which are understandable. But that's also another piece that even when we're looking at our whole, our whole strategic district improvement plan, and we're talking about UDL,
Yeah.
one of the things we know, and as a district, as we embrace universal design for learning, I think more universally, but more completely, strategies like project-based learning align with that much easier than it does with other organizations of units and curriculum.
Yes. Yeah, just to add on to that, I do want to thank administration and the leadership team as a whole for all the work that went into this budget. It is never easy to craft a budget given the very limited resources we have, and during a time of inflationary pressures, and schools are necessarily going to feel those as well. So I understand that this budget does involve staff reductions, and that is always difficult. We would hope, given the numbers of the reductions here, I mean, that hopefully that those will be covered by retirements and natural attrition moves, but that often does cause shuffling, and so that causes stress among the staff. And I don't underestimate how hard it is if you've previously been teaching 4th grade and now you might be teaching 5th grade, or you might have previously been teaching at Chris Foley and now you'll be teaching at Abbott, based on how we allocate staff to meet student needs. Those changes are very difficult for staff. Don't mean to underestimate how hard it is, but it's one of those unfortunate but necessary, responsible fiscal things we have to do to have a budget that meets the needs of all of our students and is being responsible stewards of town and school funds. So I appreciate all the hard work and thought that went into making those very difficult decisions.
The statement.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, do we want to read the whole thing? Do we want to put it on the screen? Add it to the packet? All the above?
It's up to you. I think adding to the packet and mentioning it.
Yeah, I can put it up and we can mention it. Do you want to talk about it while I do that?
Okay, so several of you will remember a few years ago there was a statement from CPAC shared to all community members as part of the budget process for FY22, and I just felt like it would be helpful to remind ourselves of the sentiment behind this. especially because of that outstanding 14% tuition change that could result in us revisiting this budget, right? So you can read it or maybe you remember, but to just remember that we're talking about our students, whether or not they're in these different buckets, and to just be careful about how we talk about that. I think it's a good reminder that we will try to remember at the beginning of each budget season moving forward.
Other discussion, other questions? Okay, well, thanks for all the good thoughts and comments. We're only missing a motion at this point.
A motion to approve the FY24 Westford Public Schools budget in the amount of $65,905,323.
Second.
Any final questions? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving the budget as described? And that's 7-0. Fantastic. Thank you.
Valerie with the anxious hand there.
Done. Yep.
I was thinking about what Valerie said just before you took the vote, and can I just make one comment to that? It has nothing to do with the vote, and I don't think it would have impacted your vote at all. Look, I just, for clarification, it stuck on me, and I don't want there to be misunderstanding.
Yes.
And so when Valerie said, depending on the 14% and the impact that that could have on this budget, I do not believe that we would be revisiting this budget
Okay.
for that purpose. It would have a much greater impact on future budgets.
Sure.
Right, because I don't want somebody right now to think, okay, well, we talked about reductions in staff, we talked about, wait a second, if all of a sudden there was an additional $500,000, what would that mean? We wouldn't then say we're going to reduce an additional X number of people for that budget. I feel like we would have to find other solutions, which is one of the reasons why I thought it was most responsible for us to have that conversation outside of the operating budget, because it wasn't feasible for us to meet that need within the operational budget. So if that was something that comes to play, it'll be just conversations that we'll have to have with our town partners to look and it could have an impact on, FY25 and things like that.
Great. I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
And what's really, really important to note, if we are put in that position, we're not the only district who will,
Yeah.
That's
right?
right.
I mean, it will be
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
other state in the,
Which why it
For the
might,
district,
in the
Yeah, it has to be
Commonwealth,
solved by
I
the
think it'll
state,
be a
probably.
bigger question, a bigger discussion.
Good point.
but I know Mari's face.
I know.
Mari's face is thinking, but the state does this all the time in different ways, and you're right.
There was some comments made at the last school committee meeting where someone said, well, surely the state will do whatever. And I just don't think that those assumptions are good when we're dealing
Right.
with concrete numbers.
Right.
So I just think that, that's just an important thing to know, and I wasn't even going to say anything.
I think it's good.
But we all were thinking it and knew you were thinking
Eyes
it,
never
so
lie.
we're glad you said it. Okay. Good, and that didn't change anybody's vote, right? No, I didn't. Okay,
So
good.
that's why it had nothing. I didn't think it has anything to do with this.
He wasn't.
Valerie,
Oh,
Are you
man,
ready?
I'm up. Okay.
for the motion of all motions, the granddaddy of all motions.
Bear with me. Motion to adjourn to executive session to review school committee executive session minutes dated December 19th, 2022. School committee executive session minutes dated July 23rd, 2018, August 13th, 2018, March 11th, 2019, May 20th, 2019, June 10th, 2019, June 14th, 2019 for public release. Joint Select Board and School Committee Executive Session Minutes dated January 28th, 2020, April 7th, 2020, May 5th, 2020 for public release, and discuss strategy with respects to Units A, C, E, and AFSCME collective bargaining. As an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position, the committee will not return to public session.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, roll call vote. Mari,
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Sean? Oh, sorry, Gloria. Let's wait till you're at a mic.
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
on the motion to adjourn to executive session.
Yes.
You knew that, though. Okay, we are adjourned. We won't be returning. Thanks to anybody who's out there watching. Thanks to everybody in here, and we'll see y'all soon.